This is Dr. Kathy Millhauser with a lecture on human motivation. One of the earliest theorists on this topic was Viktor Frankl, an Austrian neurologist who did his work in the first half of the 20th century. Frankl's most notable work on the topic of motivation was Man's Search for Meaning, which was initially published in 1952. Frankl considered this search for meaning as the primary motivation for human activity. He taught the following principles. Meaning is unique and can be fulfilled by the person alone. The concepts of meaning and values should be at the forefront when considering an individual's motivation. And that which is truly meaningful and of value to a person becomes their ultimate aim, so much so that he or she is able to live and even to die for the sake of ideals and values. Abraham Maslow is most widely known for Maslow's hierarchy of needs, a seminal theory grounded in psychology that has become the basis for much of what we know about human motivation. Maslow taught that human needs are arranged in a hierarchy. First are physiological needs, needs for food, shelter, relief from pain. Once those are satisfied, a person can begin to satisfy safety and security needs, freedom from threat, for example. Next are belonging, social and love needs, the need for friendship, affiliation, interaction with others. Next comes esteem needs, need for self-esteem and esteem for other people. And finally, self-actualization is possible, the need for making maximum use of abilities, skills, and potential. Maslow's model assumes that a person attempts to satisfy basic needs before directing behavior towards upper-level needs, and that once satisfied, a need ceases to motivate. He also asserted that unsatisfied needs can cause frustration, conflict, and stress, and that people have a need to grow and develop and will strive to move up the hierarchy. This is especially important to understand when considering motivation in the workplace. If an individual does not have basic physiological needs met, for example, enough money for food and shelter, then they are not able to move up the hierarchy to reach their full potential. Safety in Maslow's model can be compared to psychological safety in the workplace, the assurance that a person's job is secure. Belonging is relevant when thinking about group dynamics and teamwork, and considering each individual's need to feel like they fit in and understand how they are contributing. Once these needs are met, an individual can move up the hierarchy, gaining a sense of accomplishment and eventually reaching their full potential as they self-actualize in the final phase of Maslow's model. The next theory was introduced by Victor Vroom in 1964. Vroom's expectancy theory asserted that people perform best when expectations are clear, performance is achievable and challenging, and rewards are valued. Vroom introduced a simple formula for calculating motivational forces, E times I times V. The E in Vroom's formula stands for expectancy or effort, the individual's belief regarding the likelihood or probability that a person's effort will be followed by a particular outcome. In other words, this variable refers to the person's belief that their effort will result in achievement of goals. The I in the formula stands for instrumentality, the perception by the individual that achievement of goals is correlated with outcomes, such as merit pay, promotions, terminations, or even acceptance or rejection. In other words, this is the belief that meeting or not meeting goals and expectations makes a difference. The V stands for valence, or values. This relates to the value the person places on the rewards or punishments. A valence is 0 when the individual is indifferent toward it. So to summarize, Vroom found that a person's effort needed to result in outcomes that then were rewarded in a way that the person would value. If these three things were connected, Vroom found that motivation would increase. Frederick Herzberg introduced the model referred to as a motivator hygiene theory in 1966. Herzberg found that there was a difference in how a factor would motivate a person based on whether that factor came from outside or inside the individual. Extrinsic factors come from the environment, external to the person. Intrinsic factors come from internal sources, inside the person. You will see in Herzberg's model that extrinsic factors are important, but only to the extent that they do not become dissatisfiers, and so that they maintain a position of no dissatisfaction. Intrinsic satisfiers are important because they are needed for satisfaction. Examples of extrinsic factors are things like pay, working conditions, and status or titles. These things are only important to the extent that they meet a person's minimum requirements. So, for example, Herzberg found that how much money a person is paid for their work is really not a motivator. However, not being paid enough could be a demotivator. Conversely, he found that extrinsic factors like pay and working conditions were only motivators until they reached a basic standard. In other words, pay motivates a person until they are making enough money. Then it ceases to motivate. However, intrinsic factors like achievement, recognition, increased responsibilities, and advancement would continue to motivate a person because these factors resonate internally. Herzberg's research found that some of the strongest motivational factors were the ones that came from inside the person: the satisfaction in a job well done, the sense of meaning and importance of the work. In summary, Herzberg's research found that the ideal situation is one where there is an absence of extrinsic dissatisfiers and the presence of intrinsic satisfiers. Edwin Locke introduced his goal-setting theory in 1968. Locke defined a goal as a result that a person, team, or group is attempting to accomplish through behavior and actions. He found that in order to be effective, goals needed to be specific, difficult enough to be challenging, and attainable for the individual or group attempting them. The theory reminds managers to help individuals and groups to set goals that are referred to as SMART: specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. In 1969, Clayton Alderfer built on Maslow's hierarchy of needs by introducing his ERG theory. In Alderfer's model, the E stands for existence, referring to the need for food, air, water, pay, and working conditions. These are similar to Maslow's first two levels and to Herzberg's extrinsic hygiene factors. The R in the model stands for relatedness, such as meaningful social and interpersonal relationships. This is similar to Maslow's belonging needs. The G in the model stands for growth, which is a combination of Maslow's self-esteem and self-actualization levels. Other than a renaming and grouping of the levels of motivation, Alderfer found that there is also a frustration regression process. So, if a higher need is continually frustrated, the person redirects efforts toward lower needs. Finally, Ryan and Dece's contemporary work on self-determination is relevant to the study of motivation. They built on previous motivational theories to build their model, which includes elements of competence, autonomy, and relatedness. At the center of the model is the intersection of the three, a place where an individual or team would be most highly motivated. The book Drive by Daniel Pink takes Ryan and Dece's work one step further and introduces the idea that by focusing on autonomy, mastery, and purpose, individuals, teams, and organizations can reach increasingly higher levels of performance through highly motivated people. Pink's book and others are based on research such as that I reviewed in this lecture. In addition to reading the book, you might enjoy the short YouTube video that illustrates Pink's model. It's labeled RSA Animate: Drive, the Surprising Truth About What Motivates Us. Here is a list of the references that I used in this lecture so that you may read them in detail yourself. I hope that you have found value in this short lecture on the history of motivational theory and will look for connections from the contemporary work to the foundational theories that have been developed and introduced over the past century.